Every day, ordinary Americans feel the squeeze. Groceries cost more, rents bite deeper. Yet on the news, you keep hearing the same phrase. The dollar is the strongest currency on earth. If your money is the king of the world, why does life feel like it's getting harder? What happens if that crown slips? What happens if the dollar stops being the world's favorite currency? While you're still trying to pay a mortgage, save for retirement, and fill up the gas tank. This is financial history unfolded, where money, power, and history intersect. And nothing about the dollar is as permanent as it looks. The status of global reserve currency sounds like a trophy. In reality, it's a contract. It changes who works, who borrows, who saves, and who struggles. And over the last 100 years, supposedly unshakable currencies have worn that crown and lost it. To understand what might happen to ordinary Americans if the dollar loses its throne, we need to leave the present and visit the ghosts of currencies past, because this has all happened before. A century ago, the world didn't bow to the dollar. It bowed to the British pound. In 1913, London was the financial capital of the planet. Half of world trade invoiced in sterling. Ships carrying tea from India, grain from Canada, wool from Australia, all settled their accounts in the currency of the British Empire. For a middle-class family in London, the pound's crown felt invisible, but powerful. Imported food was cheap. Foreign investors trusted British bonds. British banks financed railways, mines, and ports across the globe. Then came the First World War. To win it, Britain borrowed on a scale it had never imagined. Gold reserves bled away. Debts piled up to the United States. After the war, policymakers tried to reset time, forcing the pound back onto the old gold standard as if nothing had changed. Something had changed. The world no longer trusted sterling the same way. Too much debt, too much damage. Through the 1920s and 1930s, the pound suffered devaluations, crises, and humiliation. By the end of the Second World War, the empire that once exported capital was begging. For ordinary Britons, losing the currency crown, it looked like ration books that stayed for years. It looked like frozen wages, import controls, and a slow, grinding decline. The pound did not vanish. People still used it every day. But its invisible superpower was gone. If Britain is the story of a slow dethroning, Germany after the First World War is the story of what happens when trust shatters. In the early 1920s, the German mark collapsed. Infamous hyperinflation. Prices doubled in days, then in hours. For ordinary Germans, money stopped being a tool and became a ticking bomb. Salaries were paid twice a day because by evening they were worth less. Pensioners who had saved their whole lives found their life savings could buy a loaf of bread. This wasn't just a financial event, it was a psychological one. The mark eventually died. But the memory of broken money helped fuel political extremism. When a currency fails, it doesn't just break wallets, it breaks beliefs. Our third stop jumps forward again. Countries like Argentina and Brazil, where repeated devaluations. In these places, people learn to live in two realities, the official currency of their government and the shadow currency they truly trusted, often the U.S. dollar. Shops quietly priced big purchases in dollars. Families hoarded dollar bills under mattresses. For the middle class, the message was clear. Our own currency is a promise that can be rewritten. That belief is part of what gave the U.S. dollar its crown, not just American military power, not just American GDP, but a simple, brutal comparison. When their money broke, they reached for yours, which brings us home, to the United States, to the ordinary American trying to build a life inside the empire of the dollar. For decades, the dollar hasn't just been national money. It's been global infrastructure. Oil is priced in dollars. Most international trade invoices in dollars. That global demand gives the U.S. a unique advantage. Economists call it an exorbitant privilege. For normal Americans, it has meant cheaper imports and a government able to run massive deficits. You live inside a system where the rest of the world's fear is your discount code. But no crown in monetary history has lasted forever. The Dutch guilder? The British pound. The real question is, what does it look like for the people living through the transition? It rarely happens in a single headline. Instead, it's a series of quiet decisions. A few more trade contracts get priced in euros or yuan. A few more central banks diversify their reserves. For an ordinary American, this slow dethroning would show up in three places: your prices, your payments, your power. First, prices. Imports become more expensive. The days of endlessly cheap imported stuff are over. Second, payments. Washington has to offer higher yields, higher borrowing costs for mortgages. The house you could barely afford at 3% is completely out of reach at 7%. Third, power. The invisible benefit of a reserve currency is geopolitical leverage. If the world slowly builds alternatives, that leverage erodes. History offers three broad paths for a reigning currency. Path 1, the slow fade. Path 2, the inflation tax, wages that never seem to quite catch up. Path 3, the shock, a sudden loss of confidence. Most likely, the future holds a messy combination of these paths. So what are you supposed to do? History offers one last lesson: useful skills, real assets, and strong networks. The dollar's crown is ultimately made of trust. If that trust weakens, the real question isn't, will the dollar fall? It's, who will be ready if its crown starts to slip? If this gave you a different way to think about your money, hit subscribe.